Hey y'all. I wanted to explain one thing that's not really explained in the textbook, and it has Act of 1964. In that particular act, President Johnson and Congress declared that segregation would have to end immediately throughout the country, but particularly in the South. There was a lot of pushback against it, obviously. And one of the ways in which businesses tried to push back against this act was kind of interesting. So the act forbid segregation in public places, and a lot of restaurants had been segregating. There was one restaurant in particular named Ollie's in Birmingham, and for decades, Ollie's had not allowed African Americans inside the restaurant. They would only allow them to order from a window outside, and they could take their food to go. Ollie's was really popular. People who went through Birmingham, a lot of them wanted to go to Ollie's. It was known as like a really good barbecue place. So after the Civil Rights Act was passed, they didn't change anything. They still wouldn't allow African Americans in the restaurant. So African Americans reported this, and Ollie's tried to fight against the desegregation laws by arguing that they're not under the jurisdiction of the federal government. They're only under the jurisdiction of the state government. So that's what they said. And the Constitution only gives the federal government authority over businesses that cross state lines. So interstate businesses. If the business is just within a state and doesn't cross state lines, it's technically under the control of the state government, not federal. So Ollie's was arguing that they didn't have to follow the federal law since they were only in one state. So this case went all the way to the Supreme Court. If Ollie's was allowed to sort of get away with that loophole, then you can imagine there would be lots of other businesses in the South that also made that same argument. So the Supreme Court heard the case, and the prosecution, the team that was trying to force Ollie's to desegregate, had a very kind of creative argument. And they brought the owner of Ollie's up on the stand, and they asked, like, where do you get your pork? And generally that comes from North Carolina. Where do you get your salt? That's made in somewhere else, not in not in Birmingham, not in Alabama, made somewhere else. They were like, where do you get your furniture? And a lot of that furniture was made and bought from another state. And they asked about their customers. Do you ever have out-of-state customers? And yes, of course, Ollie's did. It was kind of the place to go if you were driving through Birmingham. So some of their revenue came from out of state, and they spent a lot of revenue on out-of-state products and supplies. And for this reason, the prosecution argued that they are an interstate business, that their business does cross state lines and therefore is under the control of the Constitution, of the federal government instead of the state government. In the Constitution, this is known as the Commerce Clause. That's the clause that gives the federal government authority over interstate businesses. So in the case of this particular case with Ollie's, they expanded the definition of the Commerce Clause to include any business that has any economic transaction with a business or a person in a different state. So this meant that businesses around the South had to desegregate. They could no longer follow Ollie's and say that they're not under the jurisdiction of the federal government. The Supreme Court said that they are, unless they can prove that they have no economic relationship or business with any other state or country. So that was an important Supreme Court case in 1964. All right.